I mean, we've gone through a journey between the arrangements, the way we record from every EP. Like starting with the Howling Giant EP, that was Tom's bedroom. So like live, just the three of us. My wife records and mixes us. So we just set up, I think it was just 16 channel interface or whatever it was, the Sapphire back then, into a MacBook Pro. And she sat just on Tom's bed while the rest of us were just spread out through the room. And we went from that to where we were lucky enough to be picked for the Converse when they were doing the Rubber Tracks thing. They would bring bands into different studios. So we did Black Hole Space Wizard Part 1, all the instrumental stuff up in Converse's studio up in Boston. So that was like the first studio experience for the band where we had to go, we're prepping songs, we're going into the studio, we have 2 or 3 days or whatever it was, we need to go and figure it out. And
that was fun, but that was a weird experience too. That was like, as a guitar player, very out of my element, using amps that I wasn't used to be doing. And again, we were on a tight timeline. They basically said like, we want to fly you out to do this thing. Here's the space. However, this is your allotted time. This is the gear that we have. My buddy broke the headstock of my Les Paul like right before we got on the plane. Like it was my bad. I like to blame him, but it was really on me. I like leaned the guitar for a second on like the back of his car, and I was going to get my amp, and he was playing this goof like, it's time to go, guys, and start backing up. Even though my guitar, and it's just like, he didn't run over my guitar per se, but
just knocked it over.
Yeah. So we're like on our way to the airport, and the headstock of my '86 Les Paul was snapped.
I remember taking great care to like ship my cymbals up there. That's not cheap to do. So I was like, you know what? These are the cymbals. I'm picking these. We get up there. I put them all on the kit, and like everybody in the control room is just like, nah, you should use all of ours. And it was a point of contention for a little while where it's like, I should use these because this is my sound. And eventually we ended up with some hybrid mix of it. It still sounded good, but it's not what I picked,
Yeah. But that had its own learning experience, which led to the next way we recorded, which was through just another studio in town with a little bit more time and our own gear.
Exactly. We brought Kim with us, all of our own gear. And that was for Black Hole Space Wizard Part 2. And then moving into the full length, The Space Between Worlds, that was finally like our practice room is where we record things in my house. Tom and I built a room in this unfinished basement, and this is where we record now. So,
yeah, I think that it's really, I think it's great if you're able to be a band and go into a studio and work with a producer and an engineer that actually gives a fuck about the band and what you're trying to do, understands what's going on, and you can have a good relationship with each other. But I've been in situations where, I haven't been picked by Converse to go record something in a day, but situations where I'm recording something quick out of my control with people that are like, they don't care. Like they're happy to record, but they're like, whatever. And then the end product is always kind of like, why did we do this? Maybe you're happy with how it turned out, and maybe you didn't have that experience. But for me and my experience, it's always just been like, this just doesn't seem right. Like I think
it's just tough to be on the same page with like, what's your end goal? What's the image you're going for? And when you get other people that have a different idea of what quote unquote sounds good, like that's going to kind of change the way the final product is. I would say this though, there's always going to be like a perfect scenario and situation to record in, and you're rarely going to get that. And it's just more important, I would say, to just do it, make it sound as good as you can.
Oh yeah.
In the moment. Like I've been listening to some like Monolord stuff lately, and I feel like their albums sound so good. And I recently saw they now have their own studio they built. They're like a sound engineer. They're all on the same page with like the final product, and that's awesome. But like as a band, you can't hold out for that situation. Sometimes you just have to do it and put it out, and then just make the next album sound closer to what you imagine you want your music to be like.
Yeah, and those guys have been at it for years. So they learned from their previous studio experiences. How many albums in are they? Like 4 or 5 full lengths or something like that. So it took them until now to get to the point where they're in complete control. And I think being an underground band or just indie or whatever you want to call it these days, you're going to have to deal with some weird situations, whether it's in the studio, on the road, and it's just,
you always just have to do it. You just have to
Yeah.
do it. You just have to track, even if it sucks. I feel like just track and put it out. The tone quest is never ending, and there's always going to be something you want to improve next time. I think like it's always better to just do it. And maybe that's a more punk rock or DIY to do it, but just be like, man, just do it.
Yeah. I think that there's great learning experiences from putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. But I think there are times when, okay, well, this is our only option and we take it. But I've known bands that have driven to Chicago to record with like the Weezer engineer and stuff like that, who could not give a fuck less about their band. And they get this fucking product back that just sounds like somebody took their songs and scrubbed them down with a fucking Brillo pad. And, like, here it is, this nice little sterile product that nobody cared about and you guys were just stressed out about and spent, 4 years of your income on. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's like finding that fine line between like, just because like so-and-so worked on so-and-so album doesn't mean that like working with that producer or that studio, like we went and recorded at Abbey Road. It's like, nobody gives a shit. There's a studio here in Pittsburgh, which, I mean, they all seem like nice people and nothing against them, but they have this old Neve board that like, I don't know, like a bunch of old classic rock guys recorded through. And that's like the appeal of going to the studio. It's just because they have this board that's like, like, what is this, like a fucking Hard Rock Cafe studio? Like, what are we, like, there has to be other reasons to go to the studio other than just the fact that they have this classic board. But I know, as far as I know, the people that run the place are very nice and they put out good work. It's just like, you only hear people talking about the board, and it's just kind of a weird thing. The board didn't record people, the engineers and the people did it. I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, that's I think a lot of studios these days is they're leaning on the gear that they have or the person that has the expertise, because at the end of the day, they're a business. They're trying to bring in clients no matter what. They can't ride. They're not getting royalties off of whatever major record they did. And everybody is now able to do things from home so easily. So they're trying to figure out a way to make it all work. And, everyone's just toying with that. And for somebody like us, like working with my wife, especially on the mixes, is just, we're able to put in the time, and Tom and I can sit there and really annoy her with little nitpicky things. But not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the time to do that.